Good morning and welcome to today's Authenticity with Jera. If you're new to this stream and you're watching live or if you're watching later, this is a live stream I put out publicly on my Facebook channel that talks about many topics around authenticity. This is something we do every day. I try to get it done in the morning as close to 10 as possible, but sometimes life happens. So we try to get this done every day. If you're here around 10 a.m. most mornings, this is what will be happening. If you're watching live, feel free to add to the conversation. I can actually see my screen today, so I can respond. And if you're watching this later, either on Facebook or YouTube, feel free to join in the conversation then as well. Hey Mousy, good to see you. So yeah, we're just gonna launch into today's topic, which is mental health and how it relates to authenticity. Now, this is a topic I could spend a lot of time talking about, honestly. Mental health has been a pretty big, has been a pretty big theme for me, and is actually what led me to this kind of work, was overcoming mental health issues, and really brought me deep down into the authentic experience, I guess. But the reason this comes up for me now is that this is a question I get pretty frequently about people who are interested in the work that I'm doing, not receiving, but like my experience of it, is how do I find it to be so honest about my mental health issues? I've been really straightforward with my audience, with you, with my friends and my clients about having a history of mental illness and, having sometimes reoccurring issues around mental health. And I have people ask me, how do you maintain being a professional, especially in this line of work, and also be so open about your issues previous and current with mental health? And the answer to that question on a very basic level is that's part of my experience, and you can't be authentic without sharing your experience, right? That's usually sort of my easy answer. But I think this deserves a little bit deeper of a look, because I think mental health is an issue for most people who are going after an authentic experience. So yeah, I just wanted to bring some of the issues to light here. So there's a couple things I want to talk about. One is, and this is the simpler of the issues, which is when we have mental health issues, when we're struggling with mental health, the worst thing we can do is isolate. But that seems like the easiest thing to do, because nobody wants to be seen as being mentally ill. Nobody wants to be seen as being less than able to function, unless you're in a really deeply toxic state. Nobody wants to be seen that way. It's not a very, socially sexy thing to be. However, when we isolate, that puts us in the space with only ourselves, and ourselves, the brain issues and all the things that come with mental illness and mental health issues, we're stuck with that. We're stuck in this really abusive relationship with it. So part, I think, of why it's super important to share about mental health issues, it as a part of authenticity, is just for wellness, period. That mechanism of saying, oh, I'm authentic, so I'm going to share about this, is really nurturing, because it helps bring in the resources that we need in order to overcome being in a bad state mentally, or dealing with mental illness itself. Excuse me. So that's one of the things on the face of it. And if you struggle with being able to share this, remember, and we've all seen the memes, right? But mental illness is simply illness. We don't blame somebody who has cancer for having cancer. We don't blame somebody who has Parkinson's for having Parkinson's. So why do we have why is there a socially pervasive idea that mental illness is somehow a person's fault? I think part of it is because it affects our behaviors really strongly. It's really hard. It confuses other people and scares other people when they don't understand how we're behaving, when we're behaving outside the model of being mentally healthy. So I do think that's part of it, is people get scared and freaked out and confused when you're operating in a way that doesn't make sense, when your behaviors don't make sense to them. But that's not just mental health either. Like, that is a reaction people have to mental health, but that people have that reaction to just being authentic, just being your weird, wacky, awesome self. And people think that's weird, and there's a judgment about that. So there's no way to just dodge all the judgment. There's no way to dodge all of people's ideas and constructs around mental health. The very best thing we can do is just be as honest as we can, and that will bring in the resources that we need to deal with our illness and what is happening, and maybe our declining health, or whatever mental stuff is going on for us. So I think that's if you're struggling with how to be authentic and how to have that that fortitude to come out and talk about it, just remind yourself, and even remind those around you, that mental illness is just the same as physical illness. It's just invisible, and that sucks for us, but leukemia is also invisible. And it's not seen in that same way. So remind yourself, remind others. But really the nugget, like the really important part, so hopefully you kept watching up to this point. The really important part here for me to share with you and for us to talk about, I think, is why do people who look for authenticity, who invest in their intelligence, invest in their integrity, why do those people struggle so much with mental health? And we see this all the time. The more aware you are of yourself, of other people, of the world, it seems like the more you struggle, or the more instances of mental health issues come up. Why do we struggle with mental health issues more than, it seems, the majority of society? And this is what I really want to talk about. So there's an answer to this. There's a real bona fide answer. And for me, when I found it, it was like, oh, okay, that just makes so much sense. And that is that mental illness in people who are aware and trying to elevate their awareness over time, it's that awareness causes healthy responses to an unhealthy environment. So our society is this sort of like matrixy construct of it's a human construct. Society and its ideas are a human construct. There's something that we're built to help humans make sense of their world. They're not just implicit reality. They're not just sitting there as a society isn't just this given reality. It's a constructed, it's a created reality. And that created reality is extremely broken. We don't have health care. We are, as a society, we struggle to know if we're going to be healthy and alive tomorrow. We're worried about our jobs because job security isn't a thing anymore. And even if you're in a job that feels secure, maybe it doesn't feed you, but you don't feel like you have other options. There's so many pieces of our society, I could go on and on and on and on, that are so toxic and so unhealthy and so about filling the holes inside of us and distracting ourselves rather than being real and in the world. And so I would posit that the people who are most aware and trying to elevate their awareness have more mental health issues according to society than the rest of society, not because they're less than, but because they're more aware. And that awareness of how sick society is causes a response in ourselves of like, oh crap, everything that's holding me, everything that's around me is depressing, is causing anxiety, is causing me to wonder, like, why am I here? What is my existence about? Why should I interact with everybody else if everybody is in this like toxic place? Like, it causes sort of an existential reflection that is actually extremely healthy. I would say that this isn't true across the board. There are mental illnesses that are very, like, even visible in the brain. There are certain things that are actual physical issues such as psychosis, and there are pieces of mental illness that this doesn't really touch, but the majority of anxiety, depression, even some mood disorders and things like that, I would posit are a very healthy reaction to an incredibly toxic and unhealthy environment. And the people out there who are unaware and just functioning normally within society's normal are actually more mentally unwell than those who are struggling with anxiety and depression and all of these things because they're aware of their world. And I think that there's an insecurity, there's a deep place where most people kind of get this. And I think that's some of the judgment that comes out when people hear that we have mental health issues, or in the past we've had mental health issues, is like that insecurity becomes like a defense. It's like, oh crap, like I have this too, and nobody wants to admit that. They want to be normal. They want to be able to move through life in an easeful way and not deal with the mental health issues that most people do. But I think that being unaware that using a ton of plastic is killing the earth, that just all of cutting, deforesting the rainforest, of the huge divide between the rich and the poor, just all of these things that our modern society is not even dealing with, but is happening in the world, and most people's inability or unwillingness to look at it is actually much more deeply unhealthy than a lot of the more like natural, normal responses to something like that happening, which cause anxiety and depression and a lot of the things that we see. So yeah, I think that there's stigma around it, but I also think that the more we share and the more we're authentic about our experience, the more it kind of normalizes, and it makes people wake up. Like, holy moly, if like everybody is experiencing anxiety, if all these people that I respect experience anxiety, then maybe we're all having a fairly normal reaction. And yeah, there are people out there who are going to judge me as less professional or less capable because I've had serious mental health issues in the past. And that's okay. I'm not meant for those people, and they're not meant for me in this work, and that's all right. I don't need to appeal to everybody. I don't need to have everybody's approval. I want to reach the people who are meant to join me in this dance of learning together and elevating together. And the people who are ready to be in that judgment and ready to judge me as a professional, they're just not meant for me, and that's okay. And this actually hasn't come up recently. I've been very, very lucky to have really supportive people in my circles, but it has come up in the past. And I'm not going to shut up. I'm not going to stop sharing about mental health issues, and I'm not going to stop sharing when they come up in my actual life right now, because there are so many people out there who want to do this work, whether it's personally, like inside themselves with Authenticity, or want to do some of the work that I do with other people of helping them heal and helping them, guide them through an authentic experience or healing experience, who prevent themselves from doing that because they think mental health issues preclude them from doing that work. But like I said, I think actually most emotional, spiritual, physical healers and people working in this line of work are more prone to it. It's the awareness and the expanding evolution of their mind and their heart makes them more aware of how unhealthy things are, and then that causes a process to happen where depression and anxiety is a part of that process. So I would actually say that if somebody who's helping and helping others to heal and bringing awareness and teaching isn't experiencing some sense of anxiety about the world and the state that it's in, I would want to look at that further. I'd want to see, like, where is the disconnect? Because, our world is fairly anxiety inducing, and it's a pretty normal response. So anyway, I could drone on and on about this. I'm sure I'm well over my 10 minutes this morning, but it's just been really floating around in my head, and maybe it's judgments on myself. Maybe that's where it's coming from, of wondering sometimes, just like, how can I show up as authentically as possible, and what do I need to share? And for me, that means almost everything. When it up to a line of safety. There are some things I can't share online because of safety, like things about my daughter and stuff like that. But for the most part, I share most everything because we're so much more alike than we think we are. And the more honest we are with each other, the more we see that, and the more we see each other as similar, the more empathy and connection and understanding we can have. So anyway, that's the end of my ramble. Hopefully you stayed with me. Please feel free to leave any of your comments, especially if you have struggled with mental health or you have somebody close to you who has, especially if they're doing this work. That would be super cool. And don't worry if somebody is coming on here to comment anything that's violent or crappy or judgmental, they'll get deleted. I don't put up with the incursion on other people's emotional safety. All right, so today's Tuesday. I'm going to spend most of the day working on getting ready for tomorrow's poly discussion group. So if you're in the Oregon area at East Blair Housing Co-op, tomorrow at 6 p.m., we will be meeting to have our very first poly discussion group. We have a few people signed up already. It may be a small, intimate group, but that's okay because we'll get more talked about. But you're welcome to show up. Now, this container is a safe, consensual container, and violent language or judgment won't be tolerated. So just be aware of that if you bring a guest or if you're feel a little vulnerable showing up. Is that I hold a very tight, very safe container, and I'm really excited to share it with you all. So I promise I'm done. I hope you have a beautiful day, and until tomorrow, stay authentic, everybody.